When you deal with toxic people, their primary weapon isn't their words or actions, it's your reaction. They thrive on your anger, your frustration, your emotional outbursts. The moment you react in the way they want, they win. Emotional detachment is not about not caring, it's about caring selectively. It's about choosing where your energy goes and refusing to hand it over to someone whose sole mission is to drain you. When you master emotional detachment, you strip toxic people of the one thing they crave the most: control over your emotions. You stop feeding the fire that they try to light in you. Instead of running into the flames, you become the calm, unshaken presence that makes them realize their tricks no longer work. You're no longer a puppet they can pull by the strings of your feelings. You become untouchable. The first step to emotional detachment is awareness. You have to notice the exact moment they push your buttons. Most people only realize it after they've reacted, after they've raised their voice or let that text ruin their whole day. But if you slow down, if you pay attention to that split second when they throw bait, you can make a choice. You can choose to pause, breathe, and disengage instead of stepping into the trap. This pause is your power. It's the difference between letting them set the tone and deciding the tone for yourself. Emotional detachment is training yourself to respond with intention instead of reacting out of habit. And the truth is, the more you practice it, the less power they will ever have over you. Detachment also means you stop personalizing their behavior. The toxic person's manipulation, their rudeness, their constant negativity, it's not about you. It's about their own insecurities, fears, and unresolved issues. But the moment you make it about you, you've stepped right into their world. They want you to feel attacked, so you defend yourself. They want you to feel insulted, so you argue back. They want you to feel guilty, so you start over-explaining. But when you're emotionally detached, you see it for what it is: noise. It's not a reflection of your worth, it's a reflection of their brokenness. And once you understand that, you stop taking the bait. You also have to understand that detachment doesn't mean being cold or heartless. It means being disciplined with your emotions. It means you decide when, where, and with whom you share your emotional energy. Toxic people want you to think you're being mean or distant if you don't engage, but that's a trick. Protecting your peace is not cruelty, it's survival. You can still be polite without being drawn in. You can still be respectful without letting them in your head. You can still be kind without being a doormat. That balance, kind but detached, is what makes toxic people uncomfortable, because they can't accuse you of being hostile, yet they can't get you to play their game either. When you stop reacting, you'll notice something powerful. They'll try harder. At first, they'll push more, poke more, provoke more, because they're desperate to see if they can still control you. But if you stay consistent, if you remain calm and unshaken, they'll eventually realize you're no longer an easy target. This is where the real shift happens. They begin to fear you. Not in the sense of physical intimidation, but in the sense that you are no longer accessible for their manipulation. You become an unmovable wall, and they know there's nothing they can do to crack it. This fear is respect in disguise. They may never admit it, but they know they can't mess with you the way they once did. Emotional detachment is like building an invisible shield. They can throw their words, their guilt trips, their insults, but it all bounces off. And because toxic people feed on reactions, your silence, your calmness, and your refusal to engage becomes the most intimidating thing about you. They'll wonder what you're thinking, why you're not crumbling, why you're not fighting back, and that uncertainty will eat at them. You don't have to be louder. You don't have to prove a point. You don't have to win the argument. Your control over yourself is the win. Your refusal to be provoked is the win. Your peace intact is the win. It's not always easy, especially in the beginning. There will be times when you want to shout, defend yourself, or call them out. But remember, every time you react, you give them exactly what they want, a piece of your control. And every time you choose detachment, you take that control back. Over time, your default becomes stillness, clarity, and confidence, no matter what chaos they throw your way. You stop letting their storm pull you under, because you realize their storm is theirs to deal with, not yours. The truth is, you can't control how toxic people act, but you can control how you respond. And once you own that, you're unstoppable. You stop being their puppet. You stop being their emotional supply. You start becoming someone they can't manipulate, can't predict, and can't reach in the way they used to. And when that happens, they'll either have to change how they interact with you or disappear from your life entirely. Either way, you win without becoming like them, without lowering yourself, and without losing your peace. When you deal with toxic people, the first and most powerful thing you can do is build an unshakable sense of self. Because here's the truth. People can only shake you if they can get inside you. They can only make you doubt yourself if you've left cracks in your own foundation. This isn't about arrogance or pretending to be untouchable. It's about doing the work to know exactly who you are, what you stand for, and what you will and will not allow into your life. When you know yourself deeply, toxic people lose their leverage, because leverage comes from uncertainty, from needing their approval, from bending so you'll be liked. But when you walk into a room knowing you're enough, you don't need their validation. And when you don't need their validation, they have nothing to offer and nothing to take. This kind of self-assurance doesn't happen overnight. It's built brick by brick through discipline and small decisions. It comes from holding promises to yourself, even the ones no one else sees. It comes from doing the hard things when it would be easier to avoid them. It comes from learning how to sit with your own company and not feel empty. The stronger your internal frame is, the less you need external approval to feel steady. Toxic people feed on weakness, not because they're stronger than you, but because weakness is easier to manipulate. When you remove that entry point, you become a wall they can't climb. And that wall isn't cold or bitter, it's simply firm. You can still be kind, still be fair, but you stop being accessible to their games. The reason this works so powerfully is because toxic people hate losing control. When you respond with clarity instead of chaos, when you stand calmly in who you are, they can't push you into the emotional traps they set. They can't bait you into defensiveness or over-explaining. They want you spinning, doubting, chasing, apologizing. Instead, you give them silence where they expect an argument, a steady look where they expect panic, and a clear boundary where they expect compliance. You'll see how quickly they either back off or escalate in desperation, but either way, they've lost the upper hand. Because the truth is, fear doesn't come from aggression. It comes from unpredictability in the face of resistance. They can't predict you when you're grounded in yourself. You don't react on impulse. You act on intention. This is why developing your inner core is the most effective, non-toxic way to make toxic people fear you. They expect you to fight fire with fire, to get dragged into the same mud they live in. But when you refuse to lower yourself, you rob them of their arena. It's not about outshouting them, it's about out-centering them. And that unnerves them more than anger ever could. When someone sees that no insult, no manipulation, no subtle dig moves you off your center, they start to realize you're not an easy target. In fact, you're not a target at all. You're someone who lives on your own terms, unbothered by their need for control. And that is something they can't stand. Because they can't change it, you must also understand that this isn't a performance. You can't fake unshakable self-worth. If you're trying to act like you don't care while secretly obsessing over their opinion, they'll sense it. People with toxic tendencies are masters at sniffing out weakness. That's why this requires real internal work. The kind where you stop trying to be liked and start focusing on being respected, first by yourself. You stop explaining your boundaries to people committed to crossing them. You stop giving energy to anyone who repeatedly shows they can't be trusted with it. You understand that self-respect is not negotiable, and the more you embody that truth, the less you have to explain yourself at all. Your presence speaks for you. This is how you make toxic people fear you, without ever raising your voice or breaking your values. It's not about intimidation, it's about making yourself unshakable. Because toxic people don't go after the strongest. They go after the most available. When you close the door they've been walking through, they have no choice but to retreat or find another target. And you, instead of carrying the weight of their chaos, carry your own power. That is the kind of revenge that requires no retaliation and leaves no trace of bitterness. Only peace, control, and freedom. There's a quiet power in self-respect, a strength that doesn't need to raise its voice or wave its arms to be seen. It's in the way you walk into a room without shrinking yourself to make others comfortable. It's in the way you say no without apologizing for protecting your energy. It's in the way you look someone in the eye when they try to undermine you, and you don't flinch. Toxic people feed off weakness, but the kind of weakness they look for isn't always physical. It's emotional vulnerability, self-doubt, and the need for validation. When you build a deep, unshakable respect for yourself, you take away their ability to exploit you. They can't feed on what you don't give them. This isn't about arrogance, because arrogance is just insecurity wearing a mask. True self-respect is quiet confidence, the kind that makes people think twice before they try to cross you. The first step in developing this is knowing your value, not based on what others think of you, but based on who you are when no one's watching. If your worth depends on other people's approval, you're vulnerable to manipulation. Toxic people are experts at finding your need for acceptance and using it against you. They'll dangle approval like bait, then pull it away to keep you chasing. When you don't chase, when you're centered in your own value, you break their game. You show them they have no control over how you feel about yourself. That's when the fear sets in, because people can't control what they can't influence. You also need to master the art of not over-explaining yourself. Every time you justify your choices to someone who doesn't have your best interest at heart, you hand them a weapon. They'll twist your words, poke holes in your reasoning, and make you question your own judgment. A person with self-respect understands that their decisions don't require external validation. You don't need to submit your life for approval like it's a proposal on someone else's desk. You make your choice, you stand by it, and you move on. Silence can be one of the most intimidating answers you give. It says, "I don't need to convince you of anything." That confidence, that lack of dependence on someone else's acceptance, is what makes a toxic person back off. Part of this is also setting boundaries without guilt. People with low self-respect often feel bad for protecting themselves, as if they owe unlimited access to their time, energy, and emotions. But self-respect means recognizing that you're not obligated to be anyone's emotional punching bag therapist or constant source of attention. You teach people how to treat you by what you allow. If you consistently let someone cross your lines without consequence, they'll keep doing it. But the moment you enforce those boundaries, calmly, without drama, they realize you're not easy prey. And make no mistake, toxic people look for easy prey. Here's the thing, toxic people will test you. They will push, they will provoke, and they will try to find cracks in your armor. Your job is not to convince them to treat you better. Your job is to treat yourself so well, so consistently, that their disrespect stands out like a stain on a white shirt. When you hold yourself to a certain standard, you stop tolerating behavior that falls beneath it. That standard isn't just for others. It's for you too. Because you can't expect people to respect you if you don't live in a way that respects yourself. That means keeping the promises you make to yourself. It means not abandoning your own needs to please someone else. It means choosing people who value you for who you are, not for what they can get out of you. When you live like that, something shifts. Toxic people sense that you're not a space where they can plant their poison. You're solid, you're grounded, and you're not available for their games. That's intimidating to them, because it means they can't control the narrative anymore. Remember, self-respect isn't loud. It doesn't need to announce itself. It's in the way you carry yourself when someone tries to make you feel small and you simply refuse to shrink. It's in the way you remove yourself from a conversation that's disrespectful without feeling the need to make a scene. It's in the way you let your absence speak louder than your presence in places that don't honor you. And when you master that, you don't just protect yourself. You make toxic people afraid to even try you, because they know you're not a game they can win. There's a certain kind of power that doesn't need to be loud to be felt. It doesn't need to threaten, shout, or throw punches. It's the quiet, steady confidence that sits in your bones when you know exactly who you are and what you stand for. And when toxic people encounter that energy, they feel it. They sense they can't push you, can't manipulate you, can't pull you into their drama. But here's the thing. This kind of presence isn't something you turn on overnight. It's built by discipline, by choices, by boundaries you refuse to compromise on. When you walk into a room carrying self-respect, you don't have to prove anything. Toxic people operate like sharks. They circle the weak, they test for insecurity, they push on the cracks in your armor. But if you give them nothing to grip, they get frustrated and eventually back off. That's why you have to become grounded in your identity. If you're constantly seeking approval or afraid of conflict, they'll use that against you. But when your worth isn't up for negotiation, There's nothing they can take from you. They can't weaponize your insecurities if you've already owned them and strengthened the parts of yourself that used to be fragile. Toxic people rely on reactions. That's their game. They want to provoke you, bait you, and watch you lose control. The second you explode, they've won. But when you refuse to play, when you keep your voice calm, your body language still, your face unreadable, they feel powerless. This isn't about suppressing your emotions. It's about mastering them. You can feel anger without letting it dictate your actions. You can feel hurt without giving them the satisfaction of seeing it. Control is your weapon, and the less you give them to feed on, the more they shrink. You have to understand that silence can be louder than any comeback. When you don't rise to their level, when you respond with measured words or no words at all, you strip away their ability to control the interaction. Toxic people thrive on chaos. They want you tangled up in emotional knots because that's where they can manipulate you. But the moment you step out of that arena, they can't reach you. And that's when the fear sets in. Not because you're threatening them, but because they realize they can't influence you anymore. It's also about consistency. One calm, strong moment isn't enough. They're going to test you again and again, pushing to see if you break. Your job is to keep showing up the same way, steady, calm, unshakable. When they see that this isn't an act but your default state, it forces them to reevaluate how they approach you. Most toxic people will move on to easier targets once they realize you're not worth the effort. But some will linger, trying to find a new angle, so your consistency becomes your shield. And let's be clear, this isn't about becoming cold or robotic, it's about choosing where your energy goes. You don't owe toxic people your time, explanations, or emotional investment. You can be respectful without being available. You can be polite without being open to manipulation. It's the subtle balance between strength and grace that makes people unsure how to handle you. You're not giving them aggression they can fight, but you're also not giving them weakness they can exploit. The more you practice this, the more your energy changes. People feel it before you speak. Toxic personalities will test the waters, but they'll quickly sense they're swimming with someone who won't be toyed with. And here's the beauty. You don't have to do anything to make them fear you in the traditional sense. The fear comes naturally when they realize their tactics have no power here. They can't get a reaction, they can't control the narrative, and they can't find a crack in your armor. It's a shift from trying to defend yourself to simply living in a way that makes you untouchable. Not because you're avoiding confrontation, but because you've elevated yourself beyond their reach. You've built a life, a mindset, and a sense of self that doesn't depend on their validation or approval. And when that happens, the fear they feel is really just the reflection of their own limitations staring back at them. They see in you what they could never manipulate, and that's more intimidating than any threat you could make. Some people wear masks so convincing that if you're not paying attention, you'll miss what's really underneath. They show up smiling, supportive, maybe even overly generous at first. They speak in ways that make you feel seen and understood, like they're on your side. But hidden beneath the charm is calculation. They're not investing in you because they care. They're studying you. Every laugh you give them, every detail you share, every insecurity you expose becomes a note in their mental playbook. They're preparing for the moment they'll use it, not for your benefit, but for leverage. Toxic people with hidden agendas rarely reveal themselves in the beginning. They know the value of patience. They'll play the long game, waiting for the right opportunity to strike. You may think you're dealing with a friend, but what you actually have is someone running silent tests. They watch how you respond under stress, how quickly you trust, how much you give without question. They're gathering data because manipulation works best when it feels personalized. And when they finally make their move, it won't look like a blatant attack. It will feel like a subtle shift, something so small you almost question whether it's happening. The danger of these personalities lies in how much access you give them early on. Once they know your dreams, your fears, your soft spots, they can position themselves in ways that make you dependent on them emotionally, socially, or even professionally. You might find yourself thinking you need them, when in reality, they've just built the illusion that you do. This is why boundaries are non-negotiable. You don't hand someone the keys to your inner world until they've proven, over time, they can be trusted. And trust isn't built through words, it's built through consistent actions. Pay attention to patterns, not promises. People with hidden agendas will often reveal themselves in small, almost forgettable ways. Maybe they share something you told them in confidence, framing it as a joke. Maybe they celebrate your wins in public but diminish them in private. Maybe they always seem to be around when you're at your lowest, but nowhere to be found when you're at your best. Those are breadcrumbs, signs that their presence in your life is conditional and self-serving, and the earlier you catch these patterns, the less damage they can do. Another thing to understand is that these individuals often thrive in environments where no one questions them. That's why they target people who are naturally trusting, empathetic, or conflict avoidant. If you're someone who always wants to give the benefit of the doubt, you become the perfect target. But when you start asking direct questions, when you start noticing inconsistencies, their discomfort becomes visible. You might see them change the subject, become defensive, or try to guilt you into backing off. That's not a coincidence. It's a reaction to their cover being threatened. Your greatest defense against hidden agendas is learning to slow down your trust. Observe before you open up. Listen more than you speak in the early stages of any relationship, whether personal or professional. Notice how they treat people who can't offer them anything in return, because that's a truer reflection of their character than how they treat you. And when someone's actions don't align with their words, you take that seriously. You don't excuse it. You don't rationalize it. You don't tell yourself you're imagining things. You acknowledge what's in front of you and adjust accordingly. You also have to be willing to walk away without closure. People with hidden agendas rarely admit to their motives. They'll spin, deny, or flip the blame back on you. If you wait for them to validate your suspicions, you'll stay stuck in a cycle of manipulation. Sometimes protecting yourself means leaving without explaining why, without seeking their understanding. You remove yourself from their reach, and in doing so, you remove their ability to influence your life. The truth is, no matter how careful you are, you can't prevent every hidden agenda from crossing your path. But you can make yourself a harder target. You can build a life that doesn't hinge on anyone's approval, so you're less vulnerable to being emotionally leveraged. You can practice discernment so sharp that even the most charming mask starts to crack under your gaze. And you can remember that protecting your peace doesn't make you cold, it makes you wise. Because once you've seen what a hidden agenda looks like in action, you'll never forget it. You'll recognize the subtle cues, the misplaced praise, the conversations that feel more like fishing expeditions than genuine connection. And instead of letting them work their way deeper into your life, you'll quietly, firmly shut the door. No drama, no confrontation, just a decision that your space, your mind, and your energy aren't available for their game. The most powerful way to make toxic people fear you is by mastering emotional control, because toxic people thrive on chaos, and the moment they realize they cannot shake you, they lose their power over you. When you keep your composure, you strip them of the satisfaction they crave. This doesn't mean you ignore what's happening or pretend their behavior is acceptable. It means you refuse to give them the emotional reaction they are fishing for. Toxic people survive on your anger, your frustration, and your defensiveness. The second they see you flustered, they know they've got you exactly where they want you. But if you respond with calm, measured words and unwavering body language, you send a loud message without saying much. You are unshakable. They cannot manipulate someone who refuses to be emotionally tangled in their games. Your strength is in your restraint, and your silence can speak volumes when it's intentional and controlled. Think of it this way: every outburst you avoid is a victory they can't take away from you. Every time you maintain your composure, you're building a reputation for being untouchable. People talk, and when your reaction to nonsense is consistently calm, others learn that provoking you is a waste of time. Control also means knowing when to speak and when to walk away. You don't need to win every battle with words. Sometimes the real victory is in your refusal to engage. Walking away without letting their words pierce your armor sends a message your peace is more valuable than their drama. This is not about passive acceptance. It's about active choice. You choose to control the battlefield by refusing to play their game. And here's the truth: when you master this skill, you start to intimidate them without trying. Toxic people often expect conflict. When you don't give it to them, you force them into discomfort. They're not prepared for someone who doesn't flinch, who doesn't get pulled into the mud, and who keeps their dignity intact no matter how much poison is thrown their way. That discomfort grows into uncertainty, and uncertainty is fear. Emotional control is also about training yourself before the storm hits. You don't wait for the toxic moment to figure out how to react. You prepare in advance. You rehearse in your mind what it feels like to breathe deeply instead of snapping back, to pause before answering, to keep your voice steady when you want to yell. This preparation builds mental muscle so that when the moment comes, your response is instinct, not effort. People confuse control with weakness, but in reality, it takes more strength to stay composed than it does to lash out. Anyone can explode. Few can remain still and centered when under attack. And it's this very ability that sets you apart and makes others cautious about testing you. You need to understand that fear in this context isn't about intimidation in the traditional sense. It's not about making someone afraid for their safety. It's about creating an unshakable presence that makes them think twice before trying to mess with you. It's about removing the reward they get from targeting you. When they see that you won't be rattled, won't be baited, and won't dance to the tune they're playing, they lose interest because they realize their control over you is non-existent. And the beauty of this is that you don't have to become toxic to achieve it. You don't have to match their energy or lower yourself to their level. You rise above it, and in doing so, you create a gap between you and them that they can't cross without exposing their own weakness. The people who keep their calm in chaos are the ones others learn to respect, even if they don't like them. That respect is rooted in fear, the fear of being exposed when their attempts to control you fall flat. And when you learn to carry yourself with that level of composure, you become a force people know better than to provoke. The most powerful way to make toxic people fear you is by building a life so full, so independent, and so purpose-driven that their absence doesn't leave a void, because toxic people feed on dependency. They want you to need them, to rely on their approval, to feel incomplete without their presence. When you stand so firmly in your own life that you don't require their validation or involvement, you take away their control. This is about creating such a strong foundation for yourself, emotionally, financially, mentally, socially, that you could walk away from anyone at any time without hesitation. Imagine being so grounded in your own goals, passions, and relationships that losing someone toxic doesn't derail your path. That kind of self-sufficiency is intimidating to people who thrive on keeping others small. They want to be your anchor, but when they see you've already built your own ship, they realize they can't keep you tied down. Independence starts with clarity about who you are and what you value. When you have a clear vision for your life, you stop bending yourself to fit into someone else's version of it. You stop making decisions based on who will approve or who might leave. Toxic people are skilled at making you doubt yourself so that you'll look to them for answers. But when you've done the work to trust your own judgment, you remove their leverage. Your confidence becomes a wall they can't climb. And that wall doesn't need to be loud or boastful. It's built quietly over time through consistent self-respect, disciplined habits, and the courage to pursue your own goals regardless of who stands beside you. That quiet confidence is often more unnerving than confrontation because it shows you cannot be swayed by manipulation. Building a life beyond their reach also means creating multiple sources of strength. That includes your career, your finances, your health, your friendships, your family bonds, and your personal growth. Toxic people often target one area of your life, but when you have many pillars holding you up, knocking one down won't make you collapse. They realize they can't threaten your stability if they can't control the foundation. This is why you should invest in your skills, your network, and your mental resilience. Because the more you have to stand on, the less you can be toppled. They can't isolate you if you're surrounded by strong, healthy connections. They can't make you fear losing their support if you've already built your own. And they can't lure you into dependence if you know you can survive and thrive without them. This kind of independence also forces you to change how you see relationships. You stop seeing people as necessities and start seeing them as choices. That mindset shift alone will scare a toxic person because it means you're no longer there out of need. You're there out of want. And if the relationship becomes destructive, you can walk away without feeling like your world will end. That freedom is threatening to someone who relies on keeping you emotionally hooked. They can't dangle abandonment over your head if you've already made peace with the idea that you'll be fine on your own. It's not that you want to be alone. It's that you're not afraid of it. And that lack of fear is something they can't compete with. Toxic people want to believe they're the center of your world. But the truth is, the more you expand your life, the smaller their influence becomes. Fill your days with purpose. Work on your dreams, take care of your body, learn new things, meet new people. The busier you are building a fulfilling life, the less space you have for their chaos. And when they see you thriving without them, it creates a kind of quiet panic. They realize they can't stop your momentum. They realize you don't need their approval. And that is often the deepest cut to their ego. They're forced to confront the fact that their presence in your life is optional, and optional is dangerous for someone who survives on control. Your independence is not just a shield. It's a weapon. It protects you from being manipulated, but it also sends a clear signal that you are not an easy target. People who know they can't control you will think twice before trying to cross you. And even if they do, they'll quickly learn that you are someone who can walk away from any situation that compromises your peace. When your life is built on your own terms, you hold the power, not because you dominate others, but because you cannot be dominated. That's the kind of strength that makes toxic people fear losing their grip, and ultimately, it's the kind of strength that sets you free. The final way to make toxic people fear you is to master the art of emotional detachment. This is not about becoming cold or shutting down your feelings. It's about no longer giving toxic people the power to pull you into their storms. Emotional detachment means you stop reacting the way they expect you to. They thrive on your anger, your hurt, your confusion, because those reactions feed their sense of control. When you learn to remain calm, composed, and unbothered no matter what games they play, you strip away their ability to manipulate your emotions. It's like pulling the plug on their power source. Suddenly, the buttons they've been pressing for years no longer work, and that realization terrifies them because they no longer have influence over your state of mind. Emotional detachment doesn't happen overnight. It's a skill you build through self-awareness and practice. You start by noticing the patterns, how they bait you into arguments, how they twist your words, how they use guilt or pity to reel you back in. Once you see the patterns clearly, you can step back and refuse to play. You don't engage in pointless debates. You don't defend yourself to someone who's already decided you're wrong, and you don't allow them to dictate your mood. You might still hear their words, but you stop absorbing them as truth. You stop letting their opinion have the power to define your worth. That internal shift changes everything because it takes you out of the role they've scripted for you. They can still perform their part, but you're no longer part of the play. One of the most effective ways to practice this detachment is through the pause. Before you respond to anything they say or do, take a moment to breathe and evaluate. Ask yourself, is this worth my energy? More often than not, the answer will be no. That pause gives you control over the situation instead of handing it to them in the heat of the moment. It allows you to choose silence over conflict, distance over entanglement, peace over drama. And the more you do this, the more they realize they can't drag you into their emotional battlefield. They can't win a fight you refuse to enter. They can't spin you in circles if you refuse to step onto the ride. Detachment is also about setting boundaries that protect your emotional space. You decide how much access they have to your life, your time, and your mind. You stop explaining your boundaries in hopes they'll understand, because toxic people often pretend not to understand just to wear you down. Instead, you enforce them consistently without apology. If they cross a line, you step back, not to punish them, but to protect yourself. And you do it without the drama they're expecting. That calm matter of fact enforcement of your limits is unsettling for them, because it shows you're no longer fueled by their chaos. You've removed the emotional charge that makes their manipulation work. This kind of detachment forces toxic people to face a truth they don't want to accept. You don't need their approval. You're not seeking their validation, and you no longer fear their disapproval. They may try harder at first to provoke you, but when they see that your peace is untouchable, the fight loses its thrill. And for someone who survives on emotional reactions, that's devastating. They may retreat, they may try new tactics, but deep down they know the control they once had is gone. You've made it clear that your emotional well-being is yours alone to govern, and that's a form of power they can't take back. Emotional detachment doesn't mean you stop caring about people. It means you care more about your own mental and emotional health than about keeping toxic people comfortable. It means you can love someone from a distance, respect them as a human being, and still refuse to be pulled into their dysfunction. It means you've stopped trying to change them or make them see your side, because you know that's not your job. Your job is to protect your energy so you can give it to the people and pursuits that truly deserve it. That's what makes you unshakable. And when you become unshakable, you become someone toxic people can't control, can't manipulate, and can't intimidate. Ultimately, emotional detachment is about owning your reactions. You may not be able to control what they say or do, but you can always control how you respond. That control is the key to your freedom. It's what allows you to walk through life without being thrown off course by every jab, insult, or guilt trip. It's what makes you untouchable in ways that no amount of confrontation could achieve. And that, more than anything, is what toxic people fear. Someone who has reclaimed their emotional independence and refuses to hand it over again. Power is not about raising your voice, throwing insults, or proving you can match their venom with venom. Power is about making it clear, without a single word, that you cannot be shaken, bent, or broken by their games. Toxic people thrive on seeing you rattle, because it gives them a sense of control. The moment you stop reacting in the way they expect, you dismantle their entire strategy. But here's the part most people miss. Making toxic people fear you doesn't come from aggression. It comes from mastering your inner world. They need to see a level of self-discipline and calm that they can't touch, because that is what terrifies them the most. When you walk into a room and your presence speaks louder than any insult they could throw, you've already won. This doesn't happen by accident. It comes from intentionally building an aura that commands respect without demanding it. That means you speak less, you listen more, and you move with a purpose that says you don't waste energy on foolishness. You don't need to engage in every argument. You don't need to justify your actions. And you certainly don't need to let them pull you into their chaos. The silence you hold will become their loudest fear. They will start to second-guess themselves around you, wondering what you're thinking, wondering why they can't read you, wondering why their usual tricks don't work. They will get frustrated because they want you to lose composure. And when you don't, they realize they have no power over you. That is the kind of fear that sticks. It's not the fear of physical harm. It's the fear of being powerless in the face of someone's self-control. And let me tell you, few things are more intimidating than someone who cannot be baited. This requires you to master your emotions to the point where even if someone throws their worst at you, you still look them in the eye and respond with either calm logic or complete silence. You're not ignoring them out of weakness, you're ignoring them out of strength. Because not everything deserves your attention. Not every attack is worth a counterattack. Sometimes, the most effective counterattack is letting their words die in the air with no reaction at all. When you carry yourself with this kind of self-possession, you send an unspoken message. I'm not playing your game because I don't need to. And this message doesn't just protect you. It earns you respect from people who see it. Even those who dislike you will think twice before crossing you, because they know you won't give them the emotional reaction they're seeking. It's about shifting the dynamic entirely. Instead of you reacting to them, they start reacting to you. Instead of you walking on eggshells, they're the ones becoming cautious. They become aware that your composure is not something they can crack, and that forces them to change their behavior or distance themselves entirely. And honestly, either outcome is a win for you. You don't have to prove you're stronger by shouting over them. You prove it by refusing to step into their arena at all. Toxic people operate in a space of emotional chaos. The moment you refuse to step into that space, you take away their only battlefield. And once they realize they have nowhere to fight you, they lose. This is the beauty of true strength. It's quiet, it's controlled, and it doesn't waste itself on the undeserving. So the next time a toxic person tries to provoke you, remember this: your reaction is their reward. If you want them to fear you without becoming like them, take that reward away. Hold your composure. Guard your peace. Let your unshakable presence do the talking. That is how you win without lifting a finger.